Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Development Control and Regulatory Board. This is a public meeting and is being broadcast via YouTube. Could I remind members to turn their microphones on when they wish to speak and turn them off when they've finished speaking. Membership of the committee today, Mrs. Hilary Fryer is here in replacement, substituting for Les Phillimore. Moving on to the agenda, then item number 1 is minutes. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July 2022 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Has everyone agreed with that? Thank you very much. Item 2, I have not received any questions from the public. Item 3, I have not received any questions from members under Standing Orders 7.3 and 7.5. Item 4, there are no urgent items. Item 5, declarations of interest in respect of items on this agenda. Sorry. Mr. Bannister.
Yes, I would wish to declare an interest in respect of one of the items on the agenda. My daughter is employed as a teaching assistant at a primary school in Burbage. My view is that that is a non-registrable and non-pecuniary interest, but I wish to declare it for the sake of transparency.
Okay, noted. It's noted then. I'll just finish the second paragraph. It's okay. It is noted that all members who are members of a parish, town, district council or liaison committee will have a personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any further declarations? That looks to be no then. Item 6, petitions. I have not received any petitions under Standing Order 35. Item 7 is the planning application this afternoon for a school at Normandy Way, Hinkley. Becky Knighton is going to the application forward, and so I'll hand over to Becky to enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This planning application proposes the development of a new 210-place, one-form entry primary school with associated landscaping and external works to the west of Normandy Way, Hinkley, on land within a wider residential and community development referred to as Normandy Fields or Hollycroft Grange. The applicant is Leicestershire County Council, and this is what is known as a Regulation 3 application. This means that where land is developed by an authority, the application is submitted to and determined by that authority. Before I start my presentation, I just want to highlight that I've noticed a minor mistake in paragraph 3 of the report, where west and east should be swapped round. This map shows roughly where the application site is located in relation to Hinkley, sitting to the west of the town, shown as the red square to the west of the A47. The planning application boundary is shown here in the context of a site allocation in Hinkley and Bosworth's local plan, which is predominantly for housing, along with some commercial, community and open space development. The site allocation policy specifically refers to the provision of a primary school as part of this development. The wider development was granted outline planning permission in 2018, and since then there have been several reserve matters applications approved by Hinkley and Bosworth Borough Council for early phases of the housing and the infrastructure required for the wider development. This shows the application site in the context of the wider area. The aerial image was taken quite recently, although the development to the south of the site is progressing quickly. This shows the application site in the This photo shows the application site in April, standing from the road to the south of the application site facing north. The areas of housing shown here to the south of the site are now under construction, and some properties nearest the A47 are occupied. The area areas circled in blue show future phases of housing, and the green shows the location of planned community sports pitches. The land to the south will be an area of parkland and play space. The main road into the wider development from the A47 forms the southern boundary of the school site, and a minor road leading to Phase 8 and the pitches forms the western boundary. These roads are not yet adopted highway, but it is understood that the process to apply for their adoption will begin shortly. Along the eastern boundary of the school site is an established band of vegetation, which is not affected by the proposal. The school site sits in a slightly elevated position when viewed from land to the south and east, with the land to the north of the school rising further. This primary school has been designed to cater for residents of the wider development within the site allocation, and its size is based on the number of houses that would be constructed. The main school building is located in the southern half of the application site, oriented west to east, with its southern elevation facing the main road. In terms of access for vehicles, the entrance and exit point are proposed from the minor road along the western boundary of the site. The staff parking area in the southwest portion of the site contains 20 spaces, including disabled and electric vehicle charging spaces, and the drop-off area between the entrance and the exit contains 10 spaces. This provision complies with the relevant policies based on the size of the school. It is expected that most pupil trips will be made on foot or by bicycle, and cycle storage for staff, pupils and visitors would be provided. In terms of outdoor space, a hard outdoor PE area and sports pitch are proposed to be located in the northern half of the application site, with a tarmac playground located between the school and these facilities. Although Sports England have raised concerns about the size of the sports pitch, due to the size and topography constraints of the site, there is no available space for it to be any larger. In the southeastern corner of the site, an outdoor area is proposed for foundation level pupils, along with allotments and gardening space. The floor plan of the school building shows the main rectangular element containing the school's reception area, 7 classrooms, 1 specialist classroom, offices, group rooms and ancillary facilities. And the large square room protruding from the south houses a school hall. The school hall's location at the front of the building, with its own external doors, would allow it to be used for occasional community uses, such as for a polling station, without compromising the use or security of the rest of the primary school. Covered areas are proposed at either end of the building, where the gable wall is partially set back from the extent of the roof. The western area would be used for bike storage and a plant room, and the eastern area as outdoor space for the foundation class. This slide shows the different massing and height of the 2 elements of the building. The drawing at the top of the slide shows the southern front-facing elevation of the building and how it would be viewed from the main road into the wider development and the pedestrian entrance. The width of the rectangular element is 65 metres, and it is 3.5 metres tall to the eaves and 5.5 metres tall to the pitch of the roof. The width of the double height element is 15.5 metres, and it is 7.5 metres tall. The drawing at the bottom of the slide shows the section through the building facing west. It shows the double height element protruding around 8 metres south from the rectangular element and being around 2 metres taller. This visualisation of the development gives an impression of the overall appearance of the building's form, although the external finishes, landscaping and orientation are not exactly as proposed because these evolved during the application process. As a primary school within a largely residential development, the building is designed to stand out as an important community building. The principle of this was established by the approved design and access statement for the wide development, which describes the school as a landmark within the area. The school siting along this main access road would be read in the context of a community shopping area, which is being developed to the east, and parkland to the south. The visualisation shows the particular prominence of the double height element of the building, with the school sign on its southern facade facing the main road. In terms of the proposed external finishes for the school building, an aluminium standing seam roof is proposed on the rectangular element, which also comes down the external walls to either above the window line or to floor level. The remainder of the walls are proposed to be clad in a textured fibre cement with a linear texture used on the rectangular portion of the building and a combination of the linear texture and a more abstract texture on the double height element. The use of different materials on the double height element would go some way to break up the blocky appearance of the hall, along with the sighting of the school sign. A number of measures have been incorporated into the design and construction of the school building to maximise opportunities for sustainability, including the installation of solar panels and an air source heat pump to power and heat the building, and the use of a timber structure to minimise embodied carbon in construction materials. It is intended that the school achieves an excellent BREEAM rating for sustainability. In terms of landscaping, areas of the site that do not need to be laid with hard surfaces would either be seeded or planted to provide recreational and play space, habitat, screening and design features. Key areas of screening have been incorporated into the landscaping scheme, including around the perimeter of the site, around the sprinkler tank to the northwest of the school, and between the drop-off area and the school's outdoor spaces. Tree planting is proposed to line the pedestrian access routes into the site from the south, and this, along with planting along the frontage, would relate well to the parkland to the south. The landscaping along the frontage would also soften the appearance of the double height element of the building, and more mature plants would be used to ensure this does not take years to achieve. The site's landscaping also offers a benefit of enhancing biodiversity, which alongside sustainable building materials and energy efficient measures would result in the school meeting the high environmental standards required and supported by policy. The development of a primary school in this location is in complete accordance with the site allocation policy for the wider development. The visual prominence of the school hall from main viewpoints is softened by the use of different materials and the school sign to break up its form, and mature planting will soften this further. Although it does remain prominent, its visual impact is balanced with the functionality of siting it near the school access and is overall considered acceptable. The layout of the site represents an efficient use of space within a relatively small sloping site. With planning conditions to secure the proposed design and landscaping scheme and to manage the impacts of the development on the local highway network, the amenity of the area and the surrounding natural and historic environment, the proposed development accords with the development plan and is recommended to be granted planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Bill, local member, would like to have a few words at this meeting. Yeah. Just start when you're ready, Mr. Bill, and obviously finish when you're ready.
Well, thank you. Obviously, this proposed new school is very welcome. There's a dearth of primary school places in the urban area, across the whole of the urban area, and this is really needed. So obviously we welcome that, and obviously, and this is also one of the measures that was introduced as a mitigation measure when the 850 home laws development was approved many years ago, alongside other measures such as the provision of finance for health facilities, which still hasn't come through, but is in the scheme, and the imposition of a 40-mile-an-hour limit along the length of Normandy Way. I do have concerns, though, looking at the floor plan about parking. As we all know, parking is a problem outside every primary school and some high schools across much of the county. We have parents in the morning crowding in to drop their youngsters off, and then in the afternoon the queue for the picking up starts way before closing time of the school, and queues start to form, people jostle, and there's a degree of unpleasantness which shows itself in various forms. Looking at the plan, I can see that there appears to be, if I got it right, 10 dropping off places, picking up places, contained within the school. Now that's obviously good in principle and is to be welcomed. But at the moment, we are only looking at a 30 pupil intake. So it'll be fine for the first year with 30 pupils. And I think most of them will be dropped off rather than permitted to cycle, because however much we try to encourage walking and cycling, in practice, a majority of or a large number of parents choose to drop their children off and pick them up in their own vehicles. So the first year will be fine with 30, but the second year we're going to have 60, and you've got 10 places for 60 children. That's fine, but eventually we'll go up to 210, and I can see what's going to happen is that there'll be incidents, if you like, within that dropping off and picking up area. And what tends to happen in other schools, in my experience, is that heads declare that, well, we're not, it's not our job to traffic cars and people around outside the school, and they tend to close off gates, and no cars are allowed onto the premises. And I know that's not the case in every case, but there's conflict. And all I'm asking for is, could we approve this, but at the same time just look at whether more space could be provided, for example, on the other side of that western approach road. It's open fields at the moment. There's nothing there, and it would make sense to at least ask. I don't quite know how we'd do it. Ask I know there's more than one authority involved here. There's the borough council, the county council, and the landowner. But could there just be further talks to see whether more space could be reserved on the other side of that approach road, or even the approach road pushed a few yards to the west to allow for future growth? That's all I'd like to submit at the moment, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. I'd assume that Highways would have taken into account the full number of school intake when they're deciding on whether it's a good highways prospect or not. Becky, have you got anything to?
Yeah, so the provision of drop-off and pick-up spaces was something that we negotiated to be included within the scheme during the planning application process. In our view, and with Highways consultation response, it's sufficient and it's in line with the guidance, the policies that we have in place at the moment. It's considered sufficient. In terms of the traffic calming measures in the surrounding area, as part of the planning application, well, one of the recommended planning conditions would be that the school can't be brought into use until some measures that are set out in a transport assessment are delivered, and that includes the provision of double yellow lines, keep clear, zigzag signs, and the traffic regulation orders associated with those. So in terms of what's proposed, we at the moment consider it sufficient with the number of pupils that would be on roll at the school.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Any members of the panel wish to ask Mr. Bill a question? Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's only because I had some experience last year with a brand new primary school. I was honoured to open it, and to my surprise, I've been in and out of primary schools for many years. There was only 13 in that particular primary school. Yeah, now, I don't know the demographics here, whether you've sort of taken everything into account, because obviously...
Dan, is this a question to Mr. Bill?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I apologise.
Yeah, it's... yes, it needs to be that at this point. It looks like no one else wants to ask you a question, Mr. Bill.
Chairman, so if I can come back, and I do appreciate being given the opportunity to speak on this, is it not possible, even at this late stage, to to ask the parties to this to see whether any space could be set aside for the future, for future growth, so that area, that strip, say, to the west of that Western Approach Road could be left as, I don't know, a verge or something, so that if we get the same problem that we get everywhere else in that across the county occurs, then at least there's a room for expansion, and it doesn't have to be quite so constrained as this plan seems to show.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that we're supposed to be looking at the application in front of us today, probably not to the future, but Becky can.
I'd say that's probably a question that would be better directed at the applicant, which is the kind of education part of the county council in terms of securing additional land above and beyond what's been proposed. Like the chairman said, we're considering the application that's before us and what's been proposed within the red line of that development. So in terms of land outside that would deliver beyond what our policies and guides kind of direct us is necessary, I think it would be a question for the applicant.
Last time. Okay, if you want to say something else.
In fact, you ask the education department. The problem is, you see, that I know this has been going on for years and years and years, but this is the first time that I, as a local member, has actually seen any plan. We come in right at the end of the thing when it's all been agreed by everybody, and we can see there's a snag there. But it's too late because it's all been agreed between departments. Oh, yeah. Sorry to come back again.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Could you sit back in the public gallery now? Mr. Cross, you wanted to give us some words of wisdom, I think.
Well, just before members consider this, just the usual gypsy warning, this is to be treated like any other planning application. The fact that it's a county council one shouldn't sway you one way or the other. And in terms perhaps just to help, with regard to what Mr. Bill said, there's always a possibility of a note to applicant at the bottom of the planning permission that perhaps could cover this particular issue. Though I need to emphasise it doesn't have too much force. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologise for my earlier intervention. It was just about the numbers, because obviously if you don't get your 30, and I know there's new developments, but developments tend to have a large number of build, but then suddenly the first phase is 100, 150, 200, 300. It takes some time, because obviously that'll have a knock on over the 7 years that you're expecting this to be fully, involved. I'd like to welcome the thought of how you're using a hall for polling with a separate, because that means no school then will be closed down for a day. So I think that's more modern thinking and more sensible. They've still got the use of the hall. But the use of the hall means for other occasional uses. Now, is that weekly, fortnightly? Trying to get a feel, because it comes back to how you get to it. How do you access it with a vehicle, a car, and how the whole thing would actually operate. So I'm keen on that. Obviously, I was looking at the car parking for staff of 20, but can you confirm how many bicycles available? Because when I read through this, I just can't find it quickly, but I thought it was very small number. How many is it? 5 or something? Or is it a lot larger than that?
I can't remember off the top of my head the number of cycle spaces. I know there's an area specifically for pupils, which is the kind of the circular ones where the bike's going around the edge. Yeah. I think there's, off the top of my head, I think there's 2 of those. There's some of the Sheffield rings at the visitors entrance. I think there might be 3, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's definitely more than 5.
All right, because obviously if we're looking at 210 and we're encouraging young people to do things, to cycle if it's safe, and particularly if there's a large housing development and it's reasonably safe for them to cycle through. Some of the probably 8, 9s and 10s would probably be wanting to do that. So I think the provision for cycles might be a bit light, but it's one of these juggling things, Chairman. You know, you build 20 or 30 and only 5 get used, but as long as you've got your mind that that could be a demand later on. I'm concerned about the athletic side, the sporting area, because I have a particular interest in that, and I think it's so important when you have young people of 6, 7, 8. Now's a chance to sort of get them involved in some sort of sporting activity, and it's got to be a good thing. So if we're being told we're a bit short on our attitude there, I just feel a bit sad then, because some of those children might not be able to do some of the things that they could do elsewhere, unless you can say, yes, we can, but we can't have them all doing it at the same time. I don't know, but it's a thought that I'd be grateful for a response to. Thank you.
Thanks for that. In terms of the provision of sporting space, we've had to balance on this site how constrained it is, and something which the plans don't show is the topography of it. So in order to get enough flat space for the building and for the sports facilities, it's kind of raised up in a couple of banks. So I think that constraint isn't particularly clear on the plans, but it's something that the applicants had to work with. So in considering our recommendation for this planning application, we balanced Sports England views that it's not the recommended size for the pitch for children of this age, with how constrained the site is, and within the application boundary, the applicant explored different options, but couldn't provide any further space for the sports pitches. So they've got the outdoor hard PE area and then the sports pitch, and that's all they could deliver within the layout of the site as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. If we can start off with a couple of questions, please, Becky. Is it anticipated that any pupils will be bused into the school, or is it envisaged that they'll all come from the new estate? And secondly, is the roof of the hall flat, or is it going to have some kind of pitch on it?
So the roof of the hall is flat. I can confirm that. In terms of the children coming to school by public transport, I don't think it is something that forms part of the planning application, because of the proximity of the catchment area with the primary school. It's considered, well, we've considered it's likely most trips would be made by bicycle or on foot. So because of it serving that development next to the A47, coming in by public transport isn't something that we've secured through planning.
Right, okay, thanks. I'll come to a couple of observations then. So the school actually fronts onto what is going to be quite the main thoroughfare, serving 800 plus houses. People usually go to work at about the same time as school drop off, so that road could be quite interesting first thing in the morning. So people being people, it's probably not unreasonable to imagine there's the road heading north to the west of the site. So they're probably going to use that for dropping off. And that principle, to the north of the school, there's a large area which is designated as community sports pitches. So following on from Councillor Bill, could the school actually have or is it anticipated they'll have use of those sports pitches? And equally, is there potentially scope for a small area there to be used as a dropping off point to feed into essentially a back entrance? Just as a suggestion. But other than that, I'm happy with the proposal and happy to move it, Chair.
Did you say you're moving it, Mr. Allen? Okay. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Much along the same line as others. I mean, it's clearly been decided by the applicant they want a 210 place school and they want to make it fit there. And as the officer has said, it's constrained by its boundaries. So we've compromised on the sports facilities, we've compromised on the drop-off point, and it's a shame, but as the officer said, it's constrained by its boundaries. I too would like it to stretch out into the community sports pitches, but that's not possible, or the future home site on the left of it, as the diagram on page 8. But I don't think any of that's going to happen. So I think we're going to have to like it and lump it and get on with it. My question though is the heat pump that you mentioned, does it work both ways? Because as we can all feel now, it's pretty warm. Will this building be able to be kept cool as well?
I don't know the answer. I don't know the technology of the heat pumps. Nick, can you chip in?
Heat pumps can work in both directions. We're doing them as a county council and various other projects. So during summer, they can cool a building, and during winter, they can warm it up. It works by exchanging heat with what's effectively underground.
And this is one of those?
It is.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and it's related to drop off and pick up and all the rest of it. It's been mentioned earlier by one of my colleagues, but I live in a small village with a primary school, and we solved a lot of the drop off pick up points by putting an entrance exit into either the side or the back of the school, because the feeder roads off the estate were then used and people can park more safely than they can on the main road. So my question is, can we approach the developer, the builder, to get an entranceway put down the road as suggested, and it'll be safer for people to park their cars there than on the main road to drop the kids off? And with regards to the developer saying he can't extend the red boundary into the community sports pitches, why can't he extend it? Is it financial reasons? Has anybody approached him and asked, can we expand the red square to take off that little bit of green to give bigger football pitches and more drop-off pick-up point car parking spaces for the parents? So 2 questions, Chair. Have we actually asked the developer why he can't expand the red square? And can we have a side entrance, rear entrance on that road as shown on the diagram on page 8? Thank you.
Please.
I think one of the common themes I'm getting from a number of councillors here, including yourself and a couple of others, is some perfectly good and perfectly sensible suggestions regarding using other areas of land for additional parking, pick-up points, drop-off points, anything else that could be brought to mind. The problem we have is that this is the application site. I'm afraid we don't completely know the ownership of the land surrounding this. I suspect it probably belongs to Bloor Homes or a subsidiary thereof, or some interested landowner, etc. I suspect we don't have control over this land, and therefore our options are effectively constrained to what we can do on this particular site. As such, some disappointment, because all of the ideas that have been suggested are perfectly sensible and reasonable, and I can see the merits behind them. But I struggle to see a way in which we'd be able to deliver them specifically from a planning perspective, because what we have to assess is the application that's sitting in front of us, which is as defined by the red edge of the application site. We don't really have a remit to extend it beyond there, other than a discretionary asking whoever may be the owner as nicely as possible, being mindful that the answer may well be yes temporarily, ultimately no, or maybe a flat out no, who knows. I think that unfortunately is the position that we are in, and we have to assess the application as it is presented to us. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the side entrance, Chair?
Sorry, can you clarify that? Becky might be able to answer that a little better.
Just so I'm clear, is it, which boundary is it that you're talking about on there?
That's going to be the housing estate. It's like an access road into the houses. Could put some lay-bys in there. I know it's with the red line. You can ask the developer on the border of that red line to put an exit entrance in.
So the development that's proposed has an entrance and an exit. So you've got all vehicle access is going into the top. So it'll be. I'll get the diagram up. Sorry, bear with me a second. So once we've got the plan, if I can explain the kind of flow of traffic a little bit better. So the plan shown in the report is oriented as the compass points are. So what looks like north is north. So as the plan shows, the site entrance is the kind of the northernmost one of those two access points. So it's envisaged that traffic approaching the school would turn up that road along the western boundary into the top exit. So it means any traffic queuing to turn right into the drop-off point would be as far up as possible away from the junction with the main road, and then exactly then to come out down the one further south. Is that all right?
Okay. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Becky. An interesting application. Comments and concerns. I agree with the car parking. School drop-off and pick-up is pandemonium at best, and I don't think probably 10 spaces is adequate. It feels to me as if it's a builder putting profit before the school. It's a shame that we're having to agree on this proposal when you see all of the empty ground that is around the school at the moment is going to be having houses on it, and why it's such a small postage stamp. It's a real shame for our children, I think. The pick up and drop off area, I'm assuming that a bus would be able to access that for school trips and things, because it does look quite a narrow entrance and exit. That the bus wouldn't have to be on the road to pick up the children and drop off if they were going on days out and things. Great to have air source heating and solar panels. I couldn't find anywhere in here whether there was any rainwater collection, because we're all trying to be environmentally friendly, and particularly at the moment we see that we're short of water, whether there was a rainwater collection system in place. And I have an absolute dislike of flat roofs. There might not be a problem now, but it'll be a problem in the future. It'd be a shame that there wasn't a design feature that had even the high hall area with a pitched roof on it, because flat roof will always be a problem. Maybe not this year or 10 years time, but it will always be a problem. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lovegrove. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following on from Mr. Lovegrove's points in respect of the environmental aspects of this design, there's a lot in the design to commend itself. And Mr. Lovegrove's referred to the air source heat pumps, the solar panels, the transport plan, which is doing its level best to try and advocate for environmentally friendly transport to the new school. I note the design also will allow for electric vehicle charging points as well. Somewhat mitigating against these very good points, very good environmental points, is the staggered approach to bringing children into the school as set out by the table in paragraph 14. This school will be serving some 850 dwellings, and one well imagines that there will be parents of primary school age children, and they will be told, if you've got a child of reception year age, come to the new school. But if you've got a child year 3 or year 4, they're not allowed to go to this school. They'll have to go somewhere else. And it's not clear in the report where the next available primary school is, how many miles away is it? And whether or not there's going to be any effort to try and assist those parents that've got to travel to at least 2 schools to drop off their children during the first 7 years of the life of this school. Has that been explored at all? And is there any possible mitigation to assist those parents who I take the view there's going to be quite a number?
Yeah, thank you.
I can answer one of those questions, which is the reason why the forms are staggered as they are. I'm speaking just based on experience here. I have to confess I'm not on behalf of the local education authority, but this is just my experience of seeing schools and how they evolve. My understanding is this comes down to the practicality of actually operating so many years. So, for example, it would be highly desirable to have school places for every single age of child as they move into the estate, as it expands. In practice, though, that's potentially going to mean 7 teachers with class sizes of 2 or 3 children. So that's the approach I understand the local education authority take, although I certainly see your point and the one you are making. In terms of closer schools, I'll be brutally honest, we don't know, I'm afraid, off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. And yeah, I understand the reasons why there has to be that staggered approach, and you know, teachers will want class sizes of a decent number. But the difficulty here is that certainly in the first 7 years there's going to be added difficulties with the parents of more than one child going to that school, which adds to the congestion that members have been discussing this afternoon. So it's not just dropping off your child, but it's going to be dropping off because they have to go somewhere else as well to drop off and duplicate the problem at another primary school 1, 2, however many miles away. So I was just hoping that that issue might be addressed perhaps a little bit more in the travel plan that's being discussed in the report, to try and give some sort of additional consideration for those parents that have got to go to another primary school after dropping off a child at this one. Thank you.
Okay. And you've got a response.
Thank you. I think the balance is probably with less children at the school, so less likelihood of trips by car, balanced with the need for during this phased process, more trips potentially. I don't think it's something that's assessed specifically in the travel plan, but I imagine as there's less pupils at the school, there's less likelihood of that, and as the school years are filled, that likelihood will drop down. So I don't know, that's a potential answer, but I don't think it's something that we've directly asked for or has been assessed within the transport assessment.
Okay. Mr. Grimley, sorry, I couldn't.
That's why having 2 dams together probably doesn't help things. It's not particularly, I don't think this can be addressed through planning, but the village that I'm in, the school is having to, or has last year, turn around or turn away people within the catchment area because they've got siblings from pupils from other areas. I don't know if there's any way of avoiding that here, if you do get people coming in from other areas, which is potentially can happen depending on the reputation of the school in the future. But I don't think anything can be addressed through the planning system or the admission policies. I just wanted to make that point.
Would you please?
Yeah, it isn't something we typically take into consideration in the planning side of the school. We're looking at the suitability of a school on this site designed in this way, rather than the ways that the school would be run. And the same would go for the phased entries. This isn't something we're controlling through planning. We're not saying year 1 form, year 2 forms. This is the way the school is going to be run, rather than the merits of a primary school in this location.
Okay. Right, well, we'll go to proposer, Mr. Allen, who proposed that we pass this item. Is anyone wishing to second it? Dan? Anyone else wish to speak or add any more comments? No. Mr. Allen.
Just following on from comments, if we could ask for the hall to have a pitch roof instead of a flat, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hate them almost as much as Mr. Lovegrove, I think.
Okay, well, if that's everyone done speaking, we'll move to the vote then. All in favour of the application? That looks to be unanimous, I think. You. Okay, thanks very much. On that, we move on to item number 8 then, which is delegated tree preservation orders decisions between January and June this year, which are on page 31 and page 36. This is a report of receive and note, and unless there are any questions, we do have Jason Peach on hand to answer any questions if there are any on that item. Anyone wish to ask any questions on that? Michael.
Yeah, just for clarity, I appreciate it all for noting. Epicormic, what's that?
Sorry.
Epicormic, it's mentioned several times in the applications, and I don't know what epicormic means.
Yeah, can they get back to you, Michael, with the answer to that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, move on then to item 9. As I've said, that there are no urgent items. Item 10 is chairman's announcements. The only announcement I have is to make is that the next meeting of this board is the 8th of September 2022 at 2 p.m. At that, I'll close the meeting. And thank you very much for your attendance and participation. Thank you. Michael.
Just announced to the briefing that I'm retiring on the 31st of October, so sadly you will see me again.
Thank you. Thanks.